Are you sure?
Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never ask a bride why she's getting married. Don't wear a skirt on a windy day. Deodorant is not a shower. Don't sniff chili flakes. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Israel is doing the usual Israel things, like carry out assassinations of those that it sees as a military threat or a terrorist threat to itself, to its people. In the same process, there has been a string of them, and I will give you some names as we go along. In that process, they've carried out what seems to be their biggest hit in some time now. That is Ismail Hanniyeh, effectively the head of Hamas. Hamas, as you know, Hamas has been at war with the Israeli state for more than 20 years, and Hamas leaders, those that survive, have been at war with Israel for more than 30 years. But Ismail Hanniyeh was the chief when the October 7, 2023 attacks were carried out in Israel, and in response to which the Israelis invaded Gaza. And then you've seen the pictures and the killings and the human tragedy that has unfolded there, and killings and destruction. Now that is an ongoing process. In that process, behind the scenes, there were also negotiations going on between Hamas leaders, the Israeli side, mostly represented by the Americans, Egypt also. In fact, just last Sunday was a meeting in Rome of the Egyptians, Americans, and Qataris officials to try and work out a ceasefire formula. That's been an ongoing process. Biden administration is very involved with that. Now, it's in this situation that within days of this latest round of talks that Ismail Hanniyeh, who was the head of Hamas, his formal designation is chairman of the political bureau of Hamas, but the senior most, the head, he's been assassinated, and he's not the first one to be assassinated. It's like my predecessor was assassinated, his predecessor was assassinated, his deputy was assassinated. If you just go to Google, if you Google all of the Hamas leaders, present era, that is last 10 years and beyond, you will find a lot of them have the cross mark next to them, which means they've been assassinated. So this is an ongoing game. What happened, first of all, today, this morning at 2 a.m., Hanniyeh was in his apartment, obviously a comfortable apartment where he was put up by the Iranian government. And I'm sure he was put up by the Iranian government in a most high security, the highest possible security area of Tehran, because Iranians know, one, that he's a valuable asset and an ally. Second, that Israel is always out to get him, right? Dead or alive, more likely dead than alive. And Israelis have always targeted their people they want to put away in Iran, and the Iranians know that the Israelis always have their moles, they also have their network, and they've carried out many targeted assassinations in Tehran. So you would have presumed that he would have got the highest level of security. Look at the status he had. The status he had was not just militant leader or maybe a religious leader coming in from Qatar, exiled in Qatar, but from Gaza, coming to Iran for guidance or direction or support or anything like that. He had come in as an honored guest, almost with the status of a foreign head of state, to attend the swearing in or the inauguration of the new president in Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian. In fact, for that ceremony, leaders had come from many countries, all those countries that have relations with Israel, including India. So you will see this group photo of foreign dignitaries present at the inauguration of President Pezeshkian, the new president of Iran. And that's where you also find Nitin Gadkari, our own Union Minister for Road Transport and Highways. He is a very senior member of the BJP, a former president of the party as well. So he represented India, and he is in the same group photo as the Hamas chief who was assassinated soon after. How did this happen? All we know from accounts that have been published, that he was the apartment was either hit by a missile or by a loitering munition. Now you would know that a missile or loitering munition directed with such precision cannot have a very long range. It must have been fired from close by, which means if the Israelis have carried out this assassination, which most likely they have, they may or may not own up to it, but everybody knows, this would again confirm something that's been believed for a long time, that Israeli intelligence has deeply penetrated Iranian security, not just in Tehran, but also across the country, particularly close to their air bases, their military research facilities, and definitely their nuclear facilities. Because there is a track record of Israelis carrying out assassinations and sabotage in those places. I will come to that in a minute. Now, this was carried out in this highest of high security zones, loitering munition, which means somebody must have fired it from not far away, or maybe somebody sent up a drone which released it from some place, which means a lot of people within Tehran had to be working for Israel for this to happen. Now, just before his assassination, the Israelis had carried out the assassination of Fuad Shukr. Fuad Shukr, who's also known, his nom de guerre, his wartime name, Al-Hajj Mohsin, who's a senior commander of Hezbollah. He was assassinated in an Israeli bombing attack in southern Beirut, which laid parts of southern Beirut waste. In fact, southern Beirut has particularly been a target of Israeli attacks. I'm also surprised that so many of these militant/terrorist leaders still choose to live in southern Beirut, because it looks like anybody who moves in there, they are linked on the Google map immediately, and they have a missile or a bomb going in their direction very quickly. I will give you again a list as we go along. Now, the killing of his commander, that is Fuad Shukr, who's one of the senior most his commanders, like a number two, that followed a Hezbollah missile attack in the Golan Heights area, Israel's Golan Heights area. Now there will be questions about that. I've said Israel's Golan Heights area. Israel has annexed it. So Israel now no longer accepts that it's a disputed area. They conquered or occupied Golan Heights in 1967 in the Six-Day War from Syria. Since then, they've never negotiated giving it back. If you go there, I've been there, and I've been there almost more than 20 years back, right? It is like a territory of Israel. However, in that territory of Israel, another unique community lives. That is the Druze community, D-R-U-Z-E. And who are the Druze? Druze are about 2 million people overall. You will mostly find them in Lebanon, Syria. You find a few of them in Israel as well, about 2 lakhs of them. But 2 lakhs over a population of just about 1 crore is a lot of people. Most of these have become a part of Israel because of Israel's occupation and annexation. You can say merger of Golan Heights. So this missile hit a Druze village. The Druze, by the way, work with the Israeli army, Israeli security forces. We had talked about the Druze in a little bit more detail in an earlier episode on Lebanon, and I will share the link with you. However, the Druze, who are the Druze? Druze used to be a part of the Ismaili Muslims at one point of time. Then they broke away. They broke away into a very peculiar sort of a sect. Where they draw a lot of their religious practices and traditions from Islam, but some also from Christianity, from Greek Orthodox Church. A few also might look like they are drawn from Hinduism. So they are quite a unique community. Why Hezbollah targeted this? It's difficult to say. Possibly they targeted this village simply because it was in their range and it was easy to target. Or maybe they thought the Druze need to be taught a lesson for as what they might see as collaborating with Israel. Nevertheless, that attack, that missile hit a football field, and that resulted in the death of 12 people, almost all Druze, almost all children. In retaliation for that, or in apparent retaliation for that, Israel hit back and killed Fuad Shukr. So Fuad Shukr tension was still going on because the Iranians, the Hezbollah, they had said that they will retaliate, and the Lebanese were worried that there will be a further spiral of retaliations, attacks and retaliations, and they were working diplomatically behind the scenes to try and make sure that Beirut doesn't get attacked again. However, the Israelis had kept it all quite vague, and it had also caused the Americans a fair bit of stress, because Kamala Harris also said that Israel has the right to defend itself, but we should not give up diplomatic solutions, so we'll keep working on diplomatic solutions. However, as this escalation has mounted, US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has also said that the US will always defend the state of Israel. So that is the kind of mess it is. Now the political implication of Ismail Haniyeh's assassination is very simple. First of all, assassinations do not stop terrorism. In fact, as I speak with you, Haaretz has just posted an article of which I'll share a link with you. It's a column by Yossi Melman who speaks about Israel's assassination policy, and he says this policy doesn't work. It has never worked because all it achieves is making Israel's enemies, that is Hamas, Hezbollah, even more determined. Haaretz, we all know, is a very liberal paper, so that's a point of view. However, it's also a reality that these series of assassinations over decades have not has not been able to put down this terrorism, because one leader dies, another leader emerges. What this has done, however, is that this has sabotaged the ceasefire process. So any talks for ceasefire, any talk for a thaw right now, the return of hostages, that has now been sabotaged. In fact, you've seen the top Qatari officials saying, how can there be ceasefire talks? How can there be mediation? Because the man key to ceasefire and key to a solution now, or a thawing now, has been assassinated. There is only one leader who it suits, and that is Benjamin Netanyahu. Because Benjamin Netanyahu is in deep trouble. He knows that if he loses power, if the war stops, he will lose power, because his coalition will not stay together. He's become very unpopular also now. It was always a shaky coalition, and there are lots of funny things happening within the coalition that we don't have the time to talk about today. Maybe we'll do it at some point of time. Now, if the war stops, he loses power. If he loses power, if he ceases to be prime minister, then all the court cases against him, in corruption cases, these get activated and his prosecution begins. Once his prosecution begins, he is finished, or is most likely finished. So it suits him to delay any peace for as long as possible, and at the same time, while this spiral of killings and attacks and counterattacks, etc. continue, after all, when your country is attacked, or when your country goes overseas, far away, and takes out a well-known enemy of your country, the population would by and large be happy, and population would by and large then see the need to rally around the government of the day, thinking that all right now this is being done. Tomorrow when time comes, or election time comes, we will choose who we want to choose, but right now it's a matter of national interest, national crisis. We'd rather stay with the leader of the day. That is the reason this assassination suits Benjamin Netanyahu so much politically. Now, who was Ismail Hanniyeh? Ismail Hanniyeh, like many other leaders who've emerged, leaders of, you can call it the underground, you can call it terrorist groups, he was born in a refugee camp. In fact, that's true of so many of these leaders of Al-Qaeda and Taliban, etc., in the AfPak area as well. He was born in a refugee camp. This refugee camp was Al-Shati. From the refugee camp, he went to school. It was an UNRWA school, UNRWA. That's a controversial United Nations welfare organization, right? He went to school there. Obviously, was a smart guy, so he came in notice. In 1992, however, he was expelled by the Israelis to southern Lebanon, which the Israelis then controlled. And why was he expelled at that point? Because one Israeli border guard had been kidnapped. In punishment then, he and 400 others were expelled to southern Lebanon. What did they do? That did not kill his fervor. What it did instead was it gave him the opportunity to establish contact with leadership of Hezbollah and also with the leadership in Tehran. And since then, his rise began. By 2003, he had become a kind of staff officer, you can say officer on special duty, a staff officer, or maybe a personal assistant to then chief of Hamas, who had also been one of the founders of Hamas in 1987. By the way, we all use the word Hamas as if it's one proper name. It's not. It's actually an acronym. The full name is Harkat al-Maqwama al-Islamiyah, which is loosely translated as Islamic Resistance Movement. So Harkat al-Maqwama al-Islamiyya or Islamic Resistance Movement. Ahmad Yasin was one of its founders in 1987. In 2003, Ismail Hanniyeh became his assistant or his main aide. In 2003 itself, there was an Israeli attack to take out Ahmad Yasin. When Ismail Hanniyeh was present with him, this failed. So both of them dodged death. Ahmad Yasin, not for long, because just the following year, in 2004, he was assassinated by the Israelis. He was being wheeled to the mosque 100 yards away from his home. He was being taken on a wheelchair when Israeli Apache helicopters came in and fired hellfire missiles, killing him and a bunch of other people around him. To mask the approach of the helicopters, Israelis had flown F-16s low in the same area. So one, people's attention will be distracted, and also low-flying F-16s will make a lot of noise. So that will mask the sound of approaching helicopters. So helicopters took him out in 2004. So he survived no more than 1 year, not even a full year. Whereas Haniyeh survived a little bit longer, say 21 years, and he's been put away or he's been assassinated. Now, if I give you a further list of assassinations just of Hamas people. So Ismail Hanniyeh now, Ahmad Yasin in 2004, in fact, 23rd March 2004. In the same year, on 17th of April 2004, Abdulaziz al-Rantisi, who was a co-founder of Hamas, he was assassinated more or less similarly by the Israelis. Now, I'll be mixing up the chronology a little bit because sometimes relevance of different people emerges in different places. It's not necessarily chronological. Because if we're looking at assassinations in Gaza and also linked to what's happened with Haniyeh now. In the course of the ongoing fighting, the Israelis also claim that they killed Mohammed Deif, who was like the deputy commander of the Hamas forces in Gaza. Now, this has not been confirmed by Hamas, but I've seen stories in international press that say that the Hamas sources are informally confirming that he's been assassinated. Now we shift the scene to Iran. Because Tehran is where this latest assassination of Haniyeh has been carried out. See what the Israelis have been doing in Iran lately. I'm also listing things that have happened more recently, barring one odd, because on some of these, we have done episodes of Cut the Clutter already, and we'll share those links with you. So November 2020, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, the famous or infamous story, was a top nuclear scientist. He was assassinated with a remotely controlled machine gun, right? And nobody's been able to find out who did it, how it was done. Did the Israelis have moles? Obviously, they had moles because you cannot have remotely controlled machine guns firing with somebody holding the remote back home in Tel Aviv. So this was somebody locally available who had done it. So Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, the scientist, see the Cut the Clutter episode that featured this incident. Then I'm taking you back 2010, two more Iranian nuclear scientists. They were assassinated with car bombs 20 minutes apart in cities hundreds of miles apart. Iran is a very large country, so cities hundreds of miles apart. They were blown up with remote controlled bombs. Then May 2022, more recent, May 2022, two motorcycle-borne assassins, they killed Hassan Sayyad Hodai, who was the deputy commander of the Unit 840 of the Quds Force. Unit 840 carries out assassinations, special operations all over the world. So he was the deputy chief. He was assassinated by two motorcycle-borne assassins, and that way Iranian Revolutionary Guards lost one more key person. We know that before that, the Americans in 2020 had also assassinated. This is when Trump was still there near Baghdad in Iraq. Americans had assassinated General Qasem Soleimani, who was like the key figure in IRGC. So they lost General Qasem Soleimani in 2020. Now in May 2022, they lost Hassan Sayyad Hodai, who was deputy commander of their Unit 840. Again, May 2022, the Israelis were busy in May 2022 in Iran. May 2022, two scientists suddenly fell ill in Iran and died within days. They died within days, again in facilities very again in facilities far apart from each other, and it looked like both had been poisoned. So the first was Ayub Intezari, who was an aeronautical engineer. He was killed in a military research facility, and geologist Kamran Aga Mulai killed in another facility some distance away, quite some distance away. Both, it looked like, died of food poisoning. Now, what kind of poison was it? Who put poison in their food? Or if somebody did it, we don't know. But the suspicion is that these were assassinations. 25th December 2023. This is in the recent sequence of events. Recent sequence of events means beginning October 7, 2023, the Hamas attack in Israel. 25th December 2023, the Israelis assassinated Raza Monzari. Raza Monzari was a top commander of Quds force, and this was done in Beirut. And then April 1 this year, April 1, 2024, Israelis bombed a diplomatic compound in Damascus, in Syria. Diplomatic compound was bombed, where senior Iranian General Mohammad Raza Zahedi, along with his deputy General Mohammad Hadi Haj Rahimi, they were assassinated. It was in retaliation for that, or in apparent retaliation for that, that Iran sent out those nightly drones and missiles, a whole flurry of missiles at Israel, most of which Israel was able to intercept. The odd one got through, one odd even got to one of the Israeli air bases. Those pictures you've seen, we featured that also in an episode of Karta Clutter, of which also I'm sharing a link with you. Now, in conclusion, a word about Haniyeh. Now, Haniyeh was not really a military commander. In fact, one of the problems that Haniyeh had was that within the Hamas ranks, he was seen to be a little bit of a good time guy, because he had escaped from Gaza in 2017 via Egypt into Qatar, where the Qataris authorities built him a nice office. He built big businesses. He became very wealthy. He leaves behind billions of dollars of wealth, right? He also leaves behind a bunch of children, because he and his wife Amal, they produced 13 children, of whom 3 sons were killed in Israeli attacks in Gaza. These were Amir, Muhammad, and Hazem Haniyeh. These 3 were killed. His issue was that he wasn't fighting very much. He had never really picked up the gun to fight himself. And that's why he faced competition from the more militant leaders. For example, Yahya Sinwar. Yahya Sinwar is the commander of Hamas in Gaza. And apparently, he's still there and fighting and surviving, which gives him a higher profile. Haniyeh, on the other hand, was more like a political animal. He networked, he talked to the Qataris one day, Turks the other day, Iranians the other day, indirectly the Americans, right? And wanted to cut deals. Now that he's out of the way, he's been put away, it doesn't look like Hamas has any such figure at this point of time. His own history is interesting, but it's mostly political. I told you he survived that assassination in 2003, along with his boss at that point, Yassin. In 2006, he was appointed Prime Minister of Palestine. How did that happen? Because Hamas got a large number of seats in the Palestinian election in Gaza. Fatah got a bunch of seats in the sort of Palestinian mainland, if I may use that expression. They set up a kind of a coalition government, a unity government. In the unity government, Mahmoud Abbas became president, and he appointed Ismail Hanniyeh the prime minister. That didn't last very long. Within months, there were clashes in Gaza. In the course of those clashes, Mahmoud Abbas dismissed Haniyeh. He was dismissed. After dismissal, he became chief of political bureau. And I told you the skirmishes between Israelis and Hamas continued. 2007 was the big one. Then 2008-9, there was another war. 2012, yet another war. 2014, a war. Then there was a bit of a period of peace. 2021, yet another war. And 2023, October onwards, we know what's been happening. In all of this, Ismail Hanniyeh was a key figure. Importantly, he was also a key figure who sat in Qatar, accessible to people. A lot of people, including lots of foreign press, had his number. They could reach out to him. Now that figure is gone. So that figure is gone. That doesn't mean that presence in Qatar will be gone, that presence in Doha will be gone. But soon enough now, another figure will replace him, another face will replace him, and that's why the most important thing to watch in the Middle East right now, or the most important, most interesting face to watch in the Middle East right now, will be the person who succeeds Haniyeh in this tough position.